What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to be learning about labels in SwiftUI. Basically, a label is this component where you can inline an image plus some text. We'll take a look at why they're more useful than horizontal stacks or just plain old text, and we'll also take a look at some real-world scenarios and how you would apply these to your app. In this case, we created this menu here, and each of these labels are actually tappable. I will take a look at how to do that and incorporate it into your app. So if that all sounds good to you, make sure you start by destroying the like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. If you're new to the channel and into iOS, Swift, and SwiftUI, consider hitting subscribe to stick around. That all said, let's open up Xcode and let's talk about some SwiftUI labels. All right, we're going to get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with the app template under iOS. Let's go ahead and give our project a name of labels in SwiftUI. Make sure your lifecycle and interface are both set to SwiftUI and your language is Swift. Go ahead and continue, save the project wherever you'd like. We'll toss it onto our desktop. And the first thing we're going to do is expand our Xcode window, hit resume on our canvas to load up our preview. I'm also going to close this right panel to get a little more room to work. And we are going to work with a newer simulator for our preview over there. So I'm going to add a modifier onto our preview for the preview device. And let's go ahead and stick with the iPhone 12. And that should update your preview pretty quickly right there. So let's talk about labels. Now, we already have a text in here that our template gives us. Let's go ahead and delete this and make this a little more interesting. We're going to create a navigation view. We're going to toss in a vertical stack inside of it. I'm going to add a navigation title modifier on this, and I'm going to call this labels. And we're going to add that text back in here, and I'm going to go ahead and call that text heart rate. Now, this is pretty simple in terms of creating a text label. We see heart rate right in the center of the screen there. Now, you might be wondering, what's a label? Because is this not a label? Well, the naming is a little confusing, but this is just a text label. Let's go ahead and create a label right below this. I'm going to also add some padding on this. Let's create a label right here. If we open up the parenthesis, you'll see the various initializers, and they all have a similar semantic where you create a title and an image, right? So you can either create it directly with a title and a system image. You can create it with this one down here with a title and an icon. I'll opt for this one. And the title is basically, once again, text. So we're going to stick with heart rate. Now the icon is basically the image you want to show next to that piece of text. Now we are going to use SF symbols, which is a system named image of, I believe it's called heart.fill. And if you're not familiar with SF symbols, basically it's Apple's icon library. I think I've got it opened up here. You can actually head on over to developer.apple.com/design and download this. It has over 2,000 icons and symbols directly from Apple, also with multicolor support, so pretty cool. So basically, we provided heart.fill, which is one of Apple's many symbols. And if we take a look on the preview on the right-hand side over there, we can see that the label is right below this text label up here, and the only difference is a label inlines a image. Now, it doesn't have to be a system image. It could be your own image, but this drastically simplifies putting things next to each other when those things are text and images. Now, you might be wondering, well, couldn't I just do this with a horizontal stack? Well, in fact, you could. So let's go ahead and do that. So this would be basically a HStack, and I'm literally going to copy and paste this stuff and get rid of these parameters and the curly braces. And what you'll see is that it fundamentally looks identical. We're going to change the order of the image and text. You'll see right below the label, let me hit resume on the canvas one more time. We'll see the same thing right below, and it's actually identical. The simplicity of a label is that it reduces one of the views that you need, where you can inline all of this directly instead of having to nest and stack these yourself. So it does simplify things quite a bit. Now, both approaches are totally valid. I personally like to use label because it's more descriptive of what I'm doing versus creating, a bunch of horizontal stacks. But I digress. You can use either approach. Now let's go ahead and make this a little more interesting. Let's go ahead and add a foreground color modifier to our entire label. And you see we can make it red. We can change the icon tint as well as the text color pretty simply. We can also, of course, add a font of, let's say, a headline to this. We'll see that not only does our label get a little larger, but so does our actual image. I think it was a little hard to see there, so let me go ahead and pick a system size so it definitely gets larger. And let's go ahead and do a little bit of a real world example. So I've got a separate video on how to create a side menu where you swipe out the menu from the left-hand side. And in it, you might want to have a list of different options you can navigate to. And this is a really good example when you want to show one of those options with the icon plus the actual text. So I am going to get rid of the text here. And what I'm going to do up here is we are going to create a model, and this is going to be perhaps called menu item. We're going to say it is identifiable. We're going to want to bring in an ID in here, which will just be a UUID. And let's go ahead and say this has a title, and then it also has a system image name, just like that. And then next up, what we want to go ahead and do is create an array of these items. So I'm going to say let items is an array of menu item. And we're going to go ahead and just create a couple of these menu items. So I am going to say the first title will be home. The icon will be house. And let me copy and paste this a few times. We can change up the values. Next one we can say is profile. We can do activity. We can do settings. Let's see, what other icons do I remember offhand? We can do airplane, and maybe we can do rate app. And then respectively, we want to change up all of the image names. These image names, I am just pulling off the top of my head from SF Symbols. You can go and use any image name or even custom images. Really up to you what you want your app to look like. Let's see, this one I believe is person.circle. Hopefully I don't misspell any of these. And now what we can do is using label, it's really nice and easy to kind of set this up. We can do a for each over item. So we can say item in, just like that. And instead of creating this out here, we can toss label into our for each loop. And from the given item, we can pull out the item.title as well as the item.system image name. And looks like our preview freaked out because we changed up a bunch of code. So let's hit resume on the right-hand side. And we should see a list of all of our different things here. So we see our house, we see our profile, activity, settings, airplane, and rate app. Now, I think person.circle, I probably misspelled. Yep, I did pearson.circle. Let's go ahead and fix that. And we should see our little icon next to profile as well. Hit resume on your preview, and there it is. Boom. So let's take this a step further and make it look a little nicer. So first of all, everything is center aligned, which is perhaps not what we want. So we're going to introduce an alignment parameter to our vertical stack, and we're going to make it leading. And you'll see everything becomes left aligned now. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to give it a different foreground color. Maybe we can go with something a little brighter. Maybe we'll do a system blue. And let's also go ahead and bold basically everything in here. So we'll say bold. We'll see if we can apply that modifier there. Maybe we can't. If we can't, we can try to apply it on here. And if we can't do it on there, what we could definitely do is apply it onto our system font here. So we'll go ahead and say this is system font with a size, weight, and design. Size is 32, weight will be bold, and the design will be default. And everything should be nice and bold now. And let's see what it looks like in dark mode. The last thing I'll go ahead and do here is we're going to add a nice little divider line between each of these. So we could do, super simple, is we can just add in our for each a divider right between our label, and we do want to make sure we spell it correctly, otherwise we'll run into issues. And you'll see we have a super subtle divider line right there. It's very, very subtle and thin, but it's definitely there. So that's basically it. That's in a nutshell how you can use labels to really stylize your app. Now, I went ahead and changed the font there since it was a little too bold, but I digress. You can definitely play around with this and use labels where it's best in your app. I know personally I'll be using it for menus since it's kind of a joke and super simple to make it with this. If you wanted to get the tap gesture out of this, that's also super simple. You can use a modifier of on tap gesture, and let's go ahead and we would just print out tapped, but this is how you would get the actual tap of any of these labels. Now, I'm not a fan that Apple calls this a label. It's slightly misleading because a label and a text, in terms of language, sound identical, but a label has an image, whereas the text is just a text. So I'm going to leave it at that and not beat the dead horse anymore. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash the like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Helps out a lot. Leave any comments and video suggestions, feedback. Love hearing from you guys. I try to reply to every comment within a few days. I'm going to be focusing a lot more on SwiftUI since I've been diving a lot more into it personally lately, as well as a lot of demand from you guys. And I'm also going to do some opinion videos in the coming weeks of what are my thoughts on career things and SwiftUI and UIKit and architecture and all those super subjective comments that we get on these videos. So that all said, lastly, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Keep the channel going and growing together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.